Welcome to the Elevate podcast. Belinda Gates has said, when women are in leadership, the whole world benefits. Today's conversation showcases the truth of that statement. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Elevate, a Women's Leadership Institute podcast. We have Brynn Heather Johnson here with us today. We met Brynn at the send-off of the Martha Hughes Cannon statue, and she's been on my list to follow through with because she has an interesting story, and so I'm excited to have you here today. Thank you for coming, Brynn.
You bet. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Good. So Brynn is a current city council member of Draper. She is the local high school PTA secretary, and she is a part-time college student. So I will give that to you to kind of flesh out for us, as well as tell us something, some personal tidbit about you. It could be like your favorite game, what you're binge watching on Netflix, maybe you love to dance, whatever that might be.
Okay. Well, I'll start with something unique about me.
Okay.
So Hughes is actually my maiden name. My dad was 100% Welsh. And so I love all things British.
The British humor.
Everything British. I wish I were in a Jane Austen novel, but I always tell myself that I would be the scullery maid. I would not be the heroine of the story. That is just my demographic. I was not raised in an affluent household,
But you will catch the eye of the man of the manor, the scullery maid.
I don't know. We were coal miners through and through, right? That's what I came from. But just that my dad just loved everything about his heritage, and so that was passed on to me. Brynn is a Welsh name. It's actually a male's name in Wales, and so it was something to have this uniqueness about me that had pros and cons. When I was growing up, it wasn't a common name. People mispronounced it. They still do.
Sure.
And so it was something that was hard a little bit to have something that was so different about you that I dreaded the first day of school because I knew the teachers weren't going to pronounce my name right. So
So what do they say?
I get Brian all the time
because it's B-Y-R-N-N.
B-R-Y-N. Yeah, B-R-Y-N. Or I get Burn or Byron. So it was something, and that's why I put Heather. That's why I use my middle name, because it helps people know that I'm a woman.
Right.
Not a man.
Right.
And so it was something that I had to work hard at to be proud of and to enjoy and to like. And I finally got to go to Wales a few years ago, and I finally felt like that's where I was supposed to be, because there was my name, and my last name is Welsh as well. And so to be in that land of where my father came from was a great experience for me. So everyone pronounced my name right. So
claiming your cultural heritage. And, for many people, it is something that they have to claim, right? If they don't like it when they're growing up, maybe later. So, yeah.
So I guess everything British, that's me. So I am wearing my Princess Diana ring today too.
Oh,
I got it in Wales, and so,
Very cool.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so tell us, you lived in Washington, D.C. Before you came here, and you just fell in love with Draper, you have said. What did you love about Draper? What drew you to it? And now as a city council member, what are the things that you love about it you want to keep? What are the things that you're like, we'd love to see this happen in Draper? I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, so when my family moved back from Washington, D.C. area to Draper, obviously we were looking around at all the different cities. We had some friends who had recently moved to Draper, so they did a lot of legwork for us, which is always nice when you don't have to do that. But Draper just felt different to us. There was a sense of community and a sense of charm, and I think Draper was trying to retain its heritage. Draper was, this is stuff I'm learning about a little bit more as I've been on city council. Sure. But, Draper was a farming community, and so they have, I think, been really trying to hold on to some of that heritage. When I first became involved in the city not too long ago, I saw an ad on Facebook. I guess it wasn't an ad, but the city posted that they had an opening on the Historic Preservation Commission, and because I grew up in an area where history was everywhere, that was something that I was really excited about. So I applied, and I met with the mayor, and the mayor appointed me to be part of that commission. And so as a city council member, after I ran for city council, that is something that I am really passionate about, is
Mm-hmm.
maintaining Draper's sense of charm, its history, because even though it's obviously Utah's a lot, newer of a environment and a city and a state, there is a lot of history here that we need to still preserve and maintain. And sometimes there's one story that's been told from one group, but I think it's important. There's so many stories that are here, and we need to make sure that they're all being told.
I love that, the richness of it. And I love the idea that you felt community and that you want to preserve that. Because going down I-15, I don't want every stop to be a McDonald's and an Arby's and a gas station, right? I would love the feel to be different, for me to be able to distinguish Draper from Riverton, from everything else. So I love that.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of potential with the point. Obviously, that's a state project. So Draper doesn't have a lot of say into that, but we just approved a station area plan for town center. And, part of it is a community gathering place. So I'm hoping that we can really get working on that so that the residents have a place to gather. We would like to hopefully have a museum there. We'll see if that hopefully that happens. But, Draper has a lot of history, interesting history. And, at one point they were producing eggs for basically the whole country. So that's
really
we just don't know. People don't know that. And so
I need a big egg over there when I drive by Draper, right? Something.
So there's a lot of potential, I think, that, we could do to let people know about how great Draper is and the things that it used to do and provide for the country. So
yeah, I think that's a really sweet spot when you can preserve heritage and the things that made people great and the city great, while also embracing change, right? And growth, and learning how to meld those two together can be tricky. It can be a tricky place. So,
and right now I'm reading, the Historical Society produced a 3-volume set of Draper's history, and I've been reading that, and just to hear the different voices that are within those books, and to say, we need to broadcast that. That needs to be part of the greater history, because our residents don't know that. The greater community doesn't know that about Draper.
Right.
So,
because if you move in, you're probably, as just a move in, you're not going to read the 3-volume history.
No.
But you, as a history lover, and that's something you love about it, is something to advocate for. Yeah. It's even like, so the point, that's an interesting discussion. Is that like a space adjacent to the point? Is that inside the point you want to have that community space?
So the town center station area plan is not part of the point.
Okay.
So that's by our city hall and the track center.
Okay.
That's across the street from that. So that's different. The point may do its own thing. They just approved an event center that will be there.
Good. Yeah.
So, for concerts and programs and things like that. So that'll be a great community gathering space.
Absolutely.
So that's one of the first things I think that will, go in there. But that'll be, like I said, separate from some of the things that Draper City itself wants to do. So
yeah. So I think this is a good time to kind of dive into what the city council does. Because when we bring women into our political development series, or I'm talking with women, it is, they want to solve world hunger, and they're running for city council. And I'm like, wait, those are not, like, city council is potholes, it's roads, it's, infrastructure. So could you tell us a little bit about your duties on the city council and maybe what a meeting is like?
Yeah. The one thing that I love about city council is that it's different from week to week and month to month. And even over the course of the year and a half that I've been there, something is different every time. So in a sense, it's nice because I feel like I don't have to know every single thing at every single time, because something new is going to happen.
Sure.
But overall, like what you said, it's roads, it's sewer, it's like, infrastructure, but it's not all infrastructure, because the state, owns and maintains some roads. So it's select roads that we have. But the other really nice thing is that each city is going to have staff that they're the experts who do all of that. And so
you rely on them as a council person?
Absolutely. But I would say that what has helped me is to meet with the directors, and so that I have an understanding of what the goals are for Draper and what the priorities are for Draper.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage people who are thinking about running for city council is to reach out to people, the staff within their own city, to find out what their city's needs are, concerns are for their own city, because it's different for each city.
Different.
But obviously, and for Utah, our city doesn't have support services like mental health or, those kinds of things with support services for residents. So it really is just structural things. Land use is a big thing for, what businesses and development might want to use land for. So that's something to talk with, the planning department about.
Parks. I know in our city, parks is under the city and developing them, and right, because I got involved because I'm like, look, you can't have a park if there's not a bathroom. Please don't do that to the parent that is taking them to the park,
Right, and Draper has an amazing Parks and Rec department. We have like over 100 miles of trails. We have 44 parks, and so that's a huge part of our city that we have a huge emphasis on. But I don't feel like to run that you need to have a knowledge of all of those different areas, because you can learn that as you go. As an issue comes on the table, you should be able to meet with your city manager beforehand. And if you have questions, then direct those to the people within the city who have more knowledge than you do.
I see.
And that's all. That's learn as you go.
So tell me about your journey into politics, into running for city council. Did you ever have a moment of like, no, I don't know enough, or I don't want to do that? What did that journey look like?
So I never had a goal to be on city council. It wasn't ever something that, wasn't part of my 5-year plan. I wasn't as a little kid thinking, oh, this is something I want to do. I was, my husband had run for office a few years ago. So he's been the one who's really been into politics, and he could, name all of the key players.
Yeah. And did you help on his campaign?
I did.
Okay.
I did more of the, visual aspects of it. I wasn't really someone who was getting out there and
knocking doors.
No, I was like, I'm not doing that.
At least you were honest.
Yeah, like that. I'm not into that. But it was, a few weeks before the opening of, the race, and we had this free night in a hotel, and it was, I think, a couple weeks before my daughter was getting married. So I was planning a wedding.
Okay.
And he's like, let's go away for, a night. And I was like, great. So I was looking forward to getting some takeout, watching Netflix, all these kinds of things. So we get to the hotel. He's like, okay, I need to have a conversation with you first. Okay. And
you're like, wait a minute.
I have no idea what this is about. So he opens his laptop. He has this PowerPoint presentation of all of the reasons why I should run for city council. And
you had no idea.
No idea. And I was like, you're insane. What are you talking about? I was on the executive board for the PTA at the high school. I'm going to school. I'm getting a second bachelor's degree. I was planning a wedding for my daughter, who was out of state at the time, getting married in Utah. And I was like, there is no way I can do this. But he sat down and he said, look, you've been so involved in the community. You've been involved in the schools. I had several years before worked with a neighbor to get a stop signal, like a light installed at an intersection that I was really concerned about. There were elementary school kids crossing it on a pretty busy road. So he said, you are a great candidate to run for city council. And I just laughed at him. I said, no, that's not something I want to do. But
okay, so let me pause there. Because of your time, or because you're like, I don't see myself as city council material?
I think it was both. I think probably the biggest thing was I have no qualifications to be on city council. But the thing that he said that stuck out with me is he said, most women need someone else to encourage them to run for office.
Yes, that is so true.
And so as I drove around the city over the next couple of days, that thought just kept running through my mind, is that I would never think that I was good enough or qualified to be on city council. But as I drove around my city, I kept thinking, oh my gosh, these are the things that are really important to me about the city. One was traffic, because I thought, oh my gosh, what can we do? Could we do things, better in the city for traffic? I thought about kids and how, I was so passionate about the safety of the kids that I worked with the city to get this light installed. And then just sustainability, I'm very passionate about the environment. So how can we as a city, be better at, water conservation and things like that. And so I thought if I could come up with those things that quickly, then, maybe I should try this. Maybe I see what happens.
Yeah.
And so a little bit to just pacify my husband, because I knew if I didn't at least put my name in the, in the hat, that he would just keep bugging me until I did it. But a little bit just to say, let's see what happens.
Yeah, I love that.
So I did. I went to City Hall and I
Was your heart racing?
Well, I thought I would just put my name on a list of, here's the 5 or 6 people. But, I sat down with the city recorder and I got this big binder. And so it was a little bit more intense than I thought. But I really thought there's no way there will be someone who's, more qualified. And at that time, I didn't know that the current city councilwoman was going to step down. I didn't know, but she stepped down and didn't run again. And so I think that really opened the door for me to have a true shot at this. And so that is how I ended up being on Draper City Council.
I love that story, because sometimes when we talk about running for office, we don't get into the nitty gritty. I loved how you said, well, I considered it. I drove around my city and realized there are things that I care about. I do have an opinion about this. I have been talking in PTA about this, and you believed him. That's another part, right? You believed him. We're like, well, let's try this out. That's really cool.
Well, and I think of what he said is that, most women need some encouragement. That was really the key statement, is that and everything that he said was true. I had been so involved in the schools, and to me that wasn't good enough. But when you look at it over so many years, and as I worked with my team to help get me elected, that was enough for the residents. They were like, great, you have been involved in the schools. That is important to us. So if you've been involved in the schools and you've been committed to the schools, then you're also going to be committed to us as residents and to the city. So it translated, I think, very well into being on city council.
So then, did he help you with your campaign?
He absolutely did.
He absolutely
did. Yes. And he helped knock doors. He, hung flyers, whatever needed to happen. So
was that a process for you? Because it sounds like you were still convincing yourself that this was a good thing. Was it a process to be able to claim that and say, no, I can be an expert here, or I can at least know how to give in these areas?
Yeah, it was. And I think too, it was a long campaign, because it was, from June to the end of November. It was that special one where they delayed it a little bit. So it was long and drawn out. But I think one thing that was hard for me was to find those strengths about myself and to transfer that into a campaign, because I've been a stay-at-home mom. I've been volunteering in the schools, but how does that translate into serving your community, serving your city? Because, like you said, these issues about, road maintenance and sewer and land use, there's nothing like that in PTA, right?
Right.
So how do I stand in front of the residents and say, you should vote for me because, of my volunteer work? But I had to really dive in and look and say, well, actually, I was the treasurer for 2 years at the high school. And so I do know how to look at a budget and say, not to the same scale as a city.
Sure.
It's quite different. But, I could take some of that experience and say, this will translate really well into a city because of these volunteer things that I've done throughout, my children's educational pathway.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that and showcasing that there is value and transferable skills, right? Sometimes we think we have to leave all these skills we've done at home or wherever else we are to come into the business world or to come into politics. And really, we just need to couch them in a different way
Yeah. And I think
Yeah,
we don't see it a lot of times. It's hard for us to look at our strengths and see,
100%.
oh,
Which is why we need tapped on the shoulder.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Because sometimes other people see it in us and we don't see it. And
Mm.
that's been something that I've needed sometimes from, my coworkers now at the city, is for them to say, well, we appreciate that you've done this and you've, done these things. And I think, oh, I didn't realize those were strengths. That's just who I am.
Mm.
But,
Yeah.
they are valuable.
Yeah, I love that. Um, so I want to touch on your PTA because you touched on that in your story. You have a long history of service in the PTA, both locally and nationally. So we've touched on it a little bit about like the transferable skills, but why PTA? What leadership skills did you find? Like, was there a high moment or a low moment in your PTA service? Tell us a little bit about that because so many women are involved in their kids' schools.
Yeah. And I don't have national PTA experience. I've just done
Okay.
like within my children's schools. I think that's something that when our kids start out in elementary school, I think we're all pretty much inclined to volunteer in some sort of way, be a room mom or be the PTA president at the elementary school. And I did some of those things, but I continued to be involved as they went into secondary school, middle school,
Yeah,
and
because it
high
changes
school.
for sure.
It definitely changes, and I think a lot of the perception is PTA is no longer needed when they get older.
Yep.
And what I have found is that it definitely changes. You're not in the classroom as much, but that there's still an important value in PTA within those older school years.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do is I think we look at it more as a holistic approach to their education.
Okay.
So we're looking at, their physical safety, their emotional health, how they're doing socially.
Okay.
Those are kind of the values that PTA can bring to your child's educational system. And so, we have some art programs that we do, but there's a club that the students themselves can join, a PTA club.
Okay.
And so they're bringing service opportunities to the school themselves. And so we're supporting,
creating leaders out of them too.
Right.
Okay.
Right. We're supporting the administration. We're supporting the teachers as a PTA and just being there to say, what can we do? How can we help you provide a better experience for our students?
Mm-hmm. I love that you touched on the value of PTA because I know that this is my first year serving in PTA. I don't even know what my thing is, but she's like, let's do it. I said, okay. Because I usually serve on community councils, right? The land use, the money.
Yes.
So do tell me, I'd want to dig into PTA a little bit more because as women transition back into the workforce or to politics, many of them have experience in the schools. Mm-hmm. So tell me about the value of PTA from your lens. What are some moments or memories or experiences that you felt really showcase that?
Well, I think, again, it's providing leadership skills to women who, maybe they're having a difficult time finding a place within their community. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're stay-at-home moms. Sometimes they're working. Sometimes they're working part-time. Sometimes they're working full-time. But they want a connection to their child's school and to the other women, or, we'd love to have more dads, right? To have the connection to other people within their children's school community. And so that gives an opportunity for them to be there. The one thing that I have loved about being part of the PTA is that I understand more about, like I said, what my child is doing within the school and their community. I understand, what the teachers are going through, because I think sometimes you don't, especially when your child gets older, and they have 6 or 7 teachers, it's hard to really have a relationship.
Know them all. Yes, absolutely.
And so to have a teacher representative on the PTA who can say, these are the issues that our teachers are having. This is what they're struggling with. Or our teachers are doing great. Yeah. We appreciate the support that the parents are giving our teachers. So I really like having that kind of pulse on what's going on in the school. So that I think has been a real value to PTA to me, for me.
Yeah,
so.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so back to your political run. Sometimes running for office is not for the faint of heart, especially for women. So what did you feel during your running? I'd love to know some high lows, like the journey of it. What can people expect as they run for office? And of course, everyone's experience is different, right? Every city's different. But just kind of paint a picture for what that looks like. And then also, now that you've won, is being on city council what you thought it was? And if not, like, what is it?
Yeah. So running was obviously like nothing I'd ever experienced before.
Sure.
And I think I am somebody who I don't like to take risks. I only like to do things that I'm pretty sure that I'm going to do well,
Yeah.
or, so it was a huge step out of my comfort zone for me. I was surprised at kind of just so many different experiences where some people were really excited for me. Some people were very indifferent, like, do it. If you want to run, that's your thing. I'm not really going to be involved in it.
Did that surprise you sometimes, the people who said that?
Yeah, there were some people who were like, I don't want to get involved in politics. Like, if you want to do this, you do it, but I'm not going to get involved in this. And then some people, not anybody who I knew personally, but how many people were very negative about it and would attack me without even knowing who I was. And I'm like, I genuinely am trying to do this because I care about our city.
Sure.
And so why are you attacking me for trying to do something good? So that was surprising. So you have to have a thick skin, which I don't. And so you have to say, okay, look, they don't know who I am. They're just attacking me. I don't know. They have nothing better to do, or I don't know. And so I think you have to have your eyes open when you go into it and say you're going to have all those different experiences and you can't take it personally because they don't know you as a person.
Because it's not personal.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's, maybe they're upset about a certain issue and they're afraid you're going to, vote a certain way about a certain issue. I don't know. So I think you just have to have your eyes open. And I think having a good support system for when it does get hard, because it will be hard, and you are going to feel bad sometimes.
Yeah, well, of course.
You, right?
Some people love you and some people don't, and that's just given.
And I'm like, this is just local politics, right? I'm like, this is, again, we're just, trying to fix traffic, or we're trying, this isn't, we're not really changing the world here. We're just trying to make Draper better. But I think, too, that you do get to know people who are just as passionate about your city as you are. And that's rewarding. Yeah. When people are saying, I'm so glad that you're doing this. I support you. So that can be really validating when you hear that kind of support. And I would also say, too, that I am a very independent person. So I didn't look for help. And I think I probably should have reached out to more people and said, can you help me with this? There were a lot of people who came to me and said, if you need help, I'm here, but I think I should have reached out to more people because there were things that I didn't know how to do and what to do.
Sure.
And I think we need that community of support to lift us and build us, because it takes a village, right? And it takes a lot of people to help you win a campaign. You can't just do it on your own. So
I like that. And I love that you said, I'm capable, I'm pretty independent. I thought I'd just do this. And then I realized that it might have been easier if I would have asked other people. Sometimes we just put our head down and like get it done.
Yes. That is very much my personality. Like, I got this, I can do this with pretty much everything I do. I'm like, I'm fine, I can do this.
So if you were to ask for help from other people, if you run again, or as you would mentor other people who are running, what would you tell them? Like, what are the important positions to have in place to support?
Well, I think, publicity is a huge thing. You've got to get your message out, because you can't assume that someone's going to kind of do their own research and look it up themselves, that people are going to, maybe just go if they like the way your name looks or something. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
And it could be all the above, right? People who totally research and people are like, yeah, that sounds like a pretty name. Let's do her.
Yeah. Or, and sometimes it's, you are just given a number of where you are on the ballot, right? So it's just luck at the draw where you are. And sometimes it's just, maybe the top three, just 1, 2, 3. I don't, it's just, so you really want to get your message out. What's your message? What's important to you? What are your values? And make sure people know what those are. Yeah. Because people who are invested in the community are going to look at it and see, what do you stand for? And I think that is why I won, is because I was very clear on what my values were, and that I was active in the community.
Yeah, you already had a track record of being involved. I can see that.
And so people knew, okay, she's been involved. She's going to continue to be involved. She cares about this. And so I think that's whatever it is. If you're passionate about the environment, if you're passionate about kids, if you're passionate, whatever it is, I think if people know that, I think they're going to get behind you.
So publicity is one. Is there another one that you'd say, like, looking back, I probably should have asked someone to help me with that? Like, I've heard people say, I had someone read all the comments because I didn't want to read the comments. Like, they would just take them down. So
that probably would have been a good one because I read the comments and then it was like, why are you being so mean?
Yes, it can be brutal.
Yeah.
It can be brutal.
Yeah.
What about finances? Sometimes that's something for women to figure out how to run, how to open a bank account, all those kind of things.
Yeah. I was able to do that, but I think what was really hard for me was asking for money. I didn't want to ask for money.
Oh, like fundraising?
Yes, fundraising was so hard because I was like, I just told myself, well, we'll just pay for it. Let's just pay for it. And, and it's expensive. It's so expensive because if you want to get flyers out, those are crazy expensive. And yard signs, which not a whole lot of people used my yard signs. I don't think that's not maybe the best place to put your money, but it's expensive to run a campaign. And there are people who are willing to put money into it, especially if they agree with your platform and what you stand for.
And they're probably just happy you're running and not them.
Yes. Or that you're running and, okay, we don't want the other guy to win, right? It just depends on who's running, it just depends on what the temperature is out there. So
did that get easier the longer your campaign went in asking for money, or was it still
not at all? I'm hoping if I choose to run again, then I can say, look at these things that I did. Don't you want me to do it again? So give me some money.
So you're already thinking your PR spin.
I don't know. It's hard. I think, people work hard for their money. And so you want to make sure that they feel comfortable in putting it towards a good cause.
Yeah.
So, that was hard and then especially if you're like, I don't know if I'm going to win. So,
it's that risk.
Know. Yeah, it's a risk. You don't want them to waste their money on something that is not fruitful. So,
yeah. Well, and I think that's also appreciative, right? That you're like, I'm going to take your money. No, like you want it to go to something that is really worthwhile and has value.
Yeah. And I think when you're running, to tell somebody, this is what I'm using it for. And this is why I think this particular item is beneficial for my campaign. So if you're going to use social media, say, this is what I'm trying, to use this money for. I think that's helpful too. So people say, oh yeah, I can get behind that.
I like that. Okay. So the day of elections, are you nervous? Like, do you watch it? Do you not? Like, someone else tell you?
Yes. And we pretty much knew where I was in the election, so we had a pretty good idea that I was going to come out ahead. My husband is a huge nerd, and so he was like,
she means that in all the best ways.
Yes. So I should say, like, statistically, right? So he was like the numbers guy, right? Okay. So, okay, refreshing. And it took a while, it was, we were waiting, but yes, we were refreshing the feed all the time. And because it's local, it wasn't one of those things where, there was any polling done or anything. So we had to wait for all of the results to come in. So.
And then when you got on the city council and you had your first meeting or your first several meetings, was it what you thought? Or what, like, how do you make decisions on the council? How do you figure that out? What does that look like?
Well, and I will say I started, the election cycle, in June. I started going to city council meetings, I think in July or August, just so I would have some kind of idea,
of what they did.
And I met with the city manager, starting in December, so he could kind of start briefing me on this is what it looks like. And I had gone to a couple of city council meetings just as a resident because there were some issues that, I wanted to address. I had emailed the city council before, so I had a little idea, general idea of what was going to happen. But, like I said, there's just random stuff that comes up, and my city has been so incredible and so patient with me. As I say, sometimes at the first few months I would get an email and I would say, I don't know what any of those words in that email are.
Yeah.
Because there are so many acronyms and
all the jargon that comes along with
yes,
it. Yeah.
And you're like, okay. And they've been so kind to. I've met with all of the city directors multiple times, and they will explain, just how Draper City does things. And there's a Utah League of City and Towns that they do a little training for new city council members. So, I can't speak for every city, but my city was very supportive. I'd been the first newly elected official in a really long time, 6 years, and so.
Okay.
They hadn't really had to train anybody for a while, but they were very willing to sit down and answer any questions that I had. And I think that's been a big thing too, that I think they're grateful that I'm willing to ask questions.
100%.
And not just say, okay, whatever, but to
make
say,
it up or pretend like you don't know, or
right. But to say, and to do my own research. And I'll say, well, I looked into this and, this is what I understand, about this particular issue. So I think that they appreciate that I'm inquisitive and, I want to learn as much as I can about, a particular topic. And so I think they appreciate that.
That's cool. I don't think that I realized that you could go to like the city manager, the directors, but it makes sense, right? Because new council members come on. It could be every time there's an election if someone's going off. So it's nice to have that consistency.
Yeah, and I obviously can't speak for every single city.
Right.
I would hope that every city would be that way. And I also think that it doesn't matter what your background is. You're never going to know all of the different areas for a city. So you could have a degree in finance and, a background in finance or law or whatever, but there's still going to be some areas of the city you're not going to understand. So I think you can't expect to say, oh, I have all of the knowledge that I need to know about being a city council or any kind of elected official. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because all of that can be learned.
Yeah. And that's what the community's for too, right?
Absolutely.
To come and say, hey, did you know about this issue? This is what I've learned, or this is my experience. That way it makes it more community oriented. Like we all need each other, even though we're in all different positions.
Yeah. And I think too, as a member of city council, we don't know all of the issues. We all live in a different part of the city, and we all have our, different scope that we, are involved in. Like I'm involved in the schools, and someone else might be involved in business. And so we need the community to come and tell us, hey, this is an issue that I'm seeing in my neighborhood, or things like that.
Yeah. So as far as like, we're in a pretty political divisive time. And it's been that way before, but we are in it now. What advice do you have for people, or how have you maneuvered through that yourself? Because sometimes innocuous conversations are like, oh, I didn't mean to say that, or people get offended, or we're so divided at the moment that even things we could come together on, it seems like we're having a harder time. What are your thoughts or tips? What do you see in them?
Well, I think people just want to be heard. And so I think if you take the time to just meet with people and let them talk and not feel like you always have to be the one that's speaking, or your voice has to be heard as well. We have had some council meetings where we're not all on the same page. Some of us are voting one way and some of us are voting another way. And I've been impressed that no one's taking it personally. We're not storming off. Yeah. We're just saying that I feel strongly about this issue on this way, and someone else says, I feel strongly about it on the other way, and we can, vote the way that we feel best, and then respect each other at the end of the day. Yeah. And, I've even texted someone and I've said, I understand your point of view. This is why I felt this way. And they've said, great, and so I think to empathize with people and validating how they feel is really important, because then they're more likely to do the same for you.
Yeah.
If you come at the end of the decision saying, I can't believe you didn't support me, you're just making it worse.
Yeah. I love that your first lead was to listen, because sometimes it's not about persuading. It's not about, any of that. It's just about, I hear you. I see you. I might not agree, but let's see what we can do together, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that too with the citizens. I try to say I'm always open. Please come and let's have a talk. And there have been several times where we haven't been able to do what the citizen would like us to do, but I hope they feel like I listened and I tried to find out, is there a way that we can do what they wanted to do? And then when we've said no, I've said, well, this is why we couldn't do it. But
I love that.
I hope that they at least felt heard.
Yeah. And I love that you said I give them the reasons, because there's oftentimes a lot, I'm sure that that the citizens don't know.
Right.
So giving them some context for it, I think goes a long way in building community. Right.
Yeah. I do too, because I think people just want to know that you at least tried.
That's right.
It wasn't.
Did you even hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't just, no, we don't want to do that. We're not doing that. But it's, well, I looked into it and this is why we can't do it. And, sometimes it's on us, sometimes it's on the state, sometimes it's on the federal, who knows?
Yeah.
It's just, so.
Yeah. Okay. So, do you have kids? What do your kids think about this?
Yeah. They're super indifferent, right?
I love it. Because many times women are like, oh, I can't run because I have kids.
Yeah. I think I couldn't have done it when they were little, right? But now they're older, they're doing their own thing. And so if I text, I'm like, well, I'm in this meeting, and they're like, we don't really care, Like,
I love that you said indifferent. They're like, whatever, Mom.
Yeah, do whatever you want. We don't care. So
that's funny.
When they were little, I think they needed more from me. But my kids they're all so independent, When my oldest learned to walk, that point, she's like, I don't need parents anymore. And that's kind of how she's been since then, right? I can do it myself. I got it. I don't need you anymore. So yeah, they don't care.
Okay. Well, sometimes that's nice, right? That you don't have to both like fight it or like talk them into it or anything.
Yeah. No, they were dragged into campaigning, I would say. They were not like, Mom, this is the greatest thing. They were. Yes.
Maybe someday they'll look back and be like, I'm glad that my mom did that. We'll see. Verdict's out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they don't. I mean, I'll be in a council meeting and they're texting. I'm like, I'm in a council meeting. Can you leave me alone for a little? Okay, well, how long are you going to be? I'm like, I don't know, because I'm literally trying to run the city. What do you need from me right now? Right?
That's awesome. You're like, do your own laundry. I'm running the city.
Yeah. No, I mean, they're still all adults and they're, yeah. No. I mean, they're great. I love them. I'm glad they're independent, right? That's what you want from your kids, is for them to be independent. So yeah, but they're not impressed by this at all. So I'll just say that they're not impressed.
Oh, that makes me laugh. I love that. Okay. So what have we not talked about that you would feel is important for people to understand about the city council, about running, about your own journey with it?
I just want to tell women that they absolutely can run for city council. I think in Utah, we have a pretty low rate of women being on city council. But like I said, when I said my husband was a nerd, when I ran, he was just looking at all of the statistics for women, running, especially in the local government, to see. And there were, unfortunately, some city council races that didn't have a single woman run, right?
I know, when I see those, I'm like, dude, we should have like a chain, a network, a texting, like, hey, somebody get in the race.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is that when women run, they have a higher percentage of winning than men necessarily do, because I think probably because there aren't as many. I don't know why the reason is, but he went through that and he wrote an op-ed article for, I think, Deseret News after that race, because he was so fascinated by those statistics of how do we get more women to run, because when they run, they're successful. And I think it's part of that is that women don't think that they should or that they can, that they deserve to be in these offices. But I want to say you absolutely do deserve to be there, that your voice matters, that the things that you do that think, oh, I'm not qualified to be on city council or at the state or whatever. No, you are absolutely qualified. All these little PTA things that I did over time, have qualified me to be on city council. I wouldn't have thought 10 years ago, or when I was on the, community council. They absolutely prepared me to be on city council. And so every woman is going to have something in their story that has prepared them as well.
I love that. So often when we teach women, it's like, look, just claim your leadership. That could be in your home, that
Right.
could be in your community, that could be in your profession. But in all those places, women are leading,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Men are leading. Like, we all can lead together in all these places. So I love that you said that. And I love that your personal story is, I didn't think I could. And now you're like, yeah, let's all do it.
Yeah.
Like, we can do this.
Yes, absolutely. And I think for this upcoming election, there are some people who I think are going to run. And I'm like, yeah, if I can do it, then anybody can do it. That's the message.
Fair enough. I love that. Thank you so much for being willing to come on and share with us. If people have questions about City Council, do you mind if we put your email in the show notes?
Sure,
We
absolutely.
can reach out to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
You bet.